In this video, we're going over one tip for every single rank from bronze to top 500. That means if you're starting your climb and you want to improve, this can be the roadmap that you need in order to improve very quickly and break through those bottlenecks that you're having in your performance. So we're going to break it all down, but the question of the day is, what do you think is the most toxic rank in all of Overwatch? Why? Let me know down below. Now, the first rank that we have for you is the bronze rank, and the majority of the time, you will get out of this rank if you play enough. Oftentimes, you're just trying to get comfortable with the game, but I would make sure that you are not focusing too heavily on any specific mains or trying to really min-max your ultimate or ability use or anything like that. Try to get a wide range of characters in, learning the context of the game, learn what characters do, all their abilities, learn maps, learn health packs, learn simple interactions. You're just trying to absorb things like a sponge, and you're not trying to overly specialize right now. You're really just trying to take it all in. Now, I know this isn't going to be every bronze player, and some bronze players have been in bronze for quite some time, and I've coached quite a few of them, but I will say that this typically happens because you intentionally or unintentionally don't learn everything you can about the game. And I know that this seems like a weird concept, but the idea is you're playing a character, you know what your character does, but you're not thinking about what other characters do. Maybe you don't even know what a new character that came out does at all, or maybe the past couple characters. You don't even really think about their abilities because you've played a couple of characters and you've never even touched certain characters on the roster. You need to know the abilities of every character. Like, if you haven't spent at least a little bit of time playing everything and you know what these abilities do, then you're really setting yourself up to fail, because that's the building blocks for your game sense that everything else is going to be built upon. How are you going to get better if you don't have that fundamental pillars of knowledge that everything else is based upon? The next up, we do got to talk about silver. And with silver, the only thing that you need to focus on is dying less and not staggering. So this is the couple of tips that I'll give you. Number one, die on the objective or completely retreat if you're losing a fight. Make sure that you're not in range for enemies to chase you down, but make sure that if you do die, you're not dying incredibly late as your team's regrouping. If 3 of your teammates died and then you die 10 seconds later, you're just completely throwing games, and silver players do this more than anyone else. It's just non-stop staggering for most of the game. And all you have to do to fix this most of the time is just wait for your team. Like, sometimes you feel like you're wasting time, but you don't have to always run right back to the fight the second you spawn. Wait for your team to respawn, let them all die and come and regroup. Fighting as a full team, if you just do that consistently, you'll win like all your games. In addition to that, I want you to be playing corners and cover. Oftentimes, the time to kill for enemies isn't ridiculously high in silver. If you take damage and you have a wall that you get to take 2 steps and go behind, you're gonna die very little. Oftentimes, you're dying because you're standing in the middle of the open. You have no cover near you. And I want you to play from one cover to the next. Play from one cover, deal damage there, support there. And if you need to move to somewhere else, you move from that cover to another piece of cover. And you're going from cover to cover to cover to cover. Don't play out in the open, and focus on dying less, not staggering, and you will win a good majority of your games. This is so important to master. And in addition to that, as you start to kind of maximize all of that, I want you to learn to push when you have an advantage and pull back when you have a disadvantage. This is like the push and pull of the game, but oftentimes silver players will get a huge advantage and then they will not push at all. They'll just kind of stand there. So it's really important that you're constantly paying attention to how many people are dying, who has the numbers advantage on either team, and really get in the habit of constantly like looking up in that corner and figuring out what that number count is. Oh, it's 5v5. Oh, now it's 5v4. Oh, now it's 4v4. You know, that is really, really important to do. Next up, we do got to talk about gold. And for the gold rank, I want you to focus on not wasting your abilities. Oftentimes, gold players are just throwing around abilities that they really didn't need to use. They're taking a tiny bit of damage on Ana, they're healing themselves, or they just randomly are throwing at abilities before there's a reason to do so, and they don't have them later. So every time you use an ability, I want you to ask yourself, was it possible for me to not use it here and still be okay? Did I absolutely need to use it here? And I also want you to combine that with finding proactive ways to use your abilities to make a difference in fights, not only reactive ways. So don't just use your abilities to save people or try to help your team. Use them to try to put pressure on the enemy and make proactive and impactful plays. In addition to that, every time you use an ultimate, I want you to evaluate how that ultimate went. Did it win you the fight? Could you have won the fight without it? Was the fight already won before you pressed an ultimate? These are all important things because so many ults are wasted in gold, and I've coached a lot of gold players over the past 2 to 3 weeks. I've seen just ult dumping like crazy. It's like one person pops an ultimate and then the entire team pops an ultimate. And it's like you won the fight already. Sometimes there's even a pre-fight pick and then 4 ults get dumped into that fight that was already won. So I want you to be the person that is a little more disciplined than the rest of the people in your rank, because that can be the difference where everyone in your rank, everyone else in gold is just dumping their ultimates into a fight, but you're more disciplined and held yours. So then when you go into this next fight, you actually have it. But this doesn't mean to never pop your ultimate, by the way. You're going to need to pop it a lot. And sometimes the opposite problem is true, where people need to use an ult and there's an opportunity to use an ult, but they're just standing there waiting for the perfect time. And what matters more than how you use your ultimate is when you use your ultimate. Use what we talked about back in the silver rank, where you evaluate advantage, and that will help you decide when a fight is close and winnable, when you could use your ultimates to take that advantage. Last up, I want you to focus on execution and not speed. This is the biggest problem that I see in gold, where players will throw their abilities as fast as possible. They'll blade as fast as possible. They'll sleep as fast as possible. They'll try to go way too fast before they have high accuracy percentage or high consistency. It's important for you to learn how to walk properly with perfect form and 100% success rate than you running right off the bat and just tripping and falling, which is happening a lot. Get that consistency perfect, then increase your speed, not the other way around, and you're going to be way better off. Next up, we do get to talk about the plat rank. And this is the first rank that I'll say, yeah, you should probably evaluate your mechanical skill. Doing mechanical warm-ups and practice is good here, whether it's your ultimate, prime edge mechanics, pulse bomb training, or if it's just your aim practice, or maybe it's a sleep dart practice. There's warm-ups that you can do, there's workshop codes that you can find, and this is just overall making sure that your mechanics are starting to improve and you have the foundation for a healthy warm-up practice that's going to help your consistency later on. In addition to that, I want you to learn in plat to not prioritize objectives and instead of start thinking about team fights. The objective is not what matters. Getting 3 people on the cart is not what matters. Trying to contest instantly the Koth point is not what matters. What matters is winning the team fight, the overall team fight, and being the team with the people last standing. This is what matters more than anything. So this means taking space, objectively playing the good positions that are going to win you the fight, and not focusing the point first. Because you see a lot of plat players, they run straight to the objective, and yes, they're trying to cap it back, but guess what? The enemy team is in a better position than them, and then they just die. And they're like, oh, well, I guess we'll just spawn again and run back to the objective. But no, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage each and every time, and it's not about taking that objective or putting pressure on it right away. It's about winning the fight. Put yourself in the positions to do so. And I know that this is a little bit more complex than some of the other stuff, but I mainly just want to get the gears turning so that you understand that just touching point or always focusing the objective is most of the time not the correct way to play. Now, next up, we do got to talk about the diamond rank. And once you're here, I want you to start thinking about fight win conditions. So what is a win condition? Well, the win condition is what your team has or what they can do to win a fight, right? We just talked about how team fights are the most important thing. Well, win conditions are maybe a weak link in the enemy team. They have a Zen and you have a dive comp. Or maybe a win condition is an ultimate combo. Y'all have Nano Blade. And these are win conditions where you could walk into a fight, you could execute the strategy or combo and win said fight, right? And typically it could be an individual win condition or it could be something done by a team. And what you need to do is you need to think about what your team's win condition is and what the opponent's win condition is, and how do you play a picture in that. You might think, oh, I am a tank. What does me on Doomfist have to do with my Nano Blade win condition? Well, there's things that you can do to enable that win condition more, right? You can go in aggressively. You can bait cooldowns. You can make sure that your Ana is safe before she pops the Nano. There's a couple of things that you can do to play into that win condition, and it's important that you think about these things before you walk into the fight, because if you start to do something completely random that doesn't help the win condition, you're not even thinking big picture here, and you're focusing only on what you're experiencing, while at the same time leaving the most important pieces of value on the table. And in addition to that, if you know the opponent's win condition, they have grab, they have shatter, they have this, they have that, you can develop a plan to play around them, putting extra pressure on someone, making sure to not play close to your team, changing up your play style, or maybe even trying to force your win condition before they get theirs off. There's a lot of things that you can do, but it first has to have you think about team fights and think about the win conditions to said team fights and see how you play into that each and every fight, that is really how you're going to get out of the diamond rank. Now, next up, we do got to talk about masters. And what I really want you to focus on here is trying to find ways to leverage your advantage, while at the same time finding ways to lessen your disadvantage. So let's talk about acceptable losses. So learning when you can get out of a fight, pull out of a fight, temporarily give up space, but still apply enough pressure from a safe enough range to where you don't just give up all your space. Knowing when it's not realistic for you to back out and you have to go in and die and reset. These are the things that a Masters player needs to know. They need to understand what the enemy team can do, how aggressive they can be, and where you can play to still maintain space and pressure without risk getting staggered. And the more space you maintain without getting staggered, the less and less advantage the opponents get after a one-team fight. So you could have potentially more fights because you're giving up less advantage even though the enemy team is winning more fights. This is a really, really important factor in Masters. In addition to that, you have to learn how to leverage your advantages when you have a one fight. How do you stagger? How do you push up? Where can you push up? When can you force an engagement onto enemies that are trying to regroup? And how much of that are you getting away with? Maybe you're trying it, but your team is not with you, and then you're dying and staggering. How can you change that to where you're doing as much as you possibly can with your team and your resources available to you, but not so much to where you're feeding? This is super important, and it's a really hard concept to balance in ranked play, but it's something that you have to learn how to do because it can really, really easily be something that you're trying for and then you feed, but you got to find that happy balance if you want to win in ranked. And of course, doing this with a duo is a lot easier, but it is something that I want you to start thinking about a lot more. And if you get it right, you're going to climb out of Masters fairly simply. Now, next up, we do got to talk about Grandmasters. And to get out of this rank, what you mainly need is consistency. Absolutely no silly deaths, no mistake deaths that just really came down to you being too aggressive or playing in a silly position. And another part of this is always getting value. Never having these games where you're just doing nothing, and never allowing yourself to have these games that you're doing nothing. This means you need to adapt your playstyle. This means you need to adapt what you're picking. But regardless, a Grandmaster player needs to be able to find consistency regardless of the game that they're in. If you are a person that is super swingy in your gameplay, then you're not adapting well enough and you have too many swingy matchups, or there's certain problems in your gameplay, certain mistakes that you're making that certain other players are exploiting too much, and that's something that you need to identify and fix. Maybe it's a positional mistake, maybe your mechanics are not on point. There could be a number of other factors involved into messing with that consistency you're getting game after game. Now, having that consistency and still being able to do all the other stuff we talked about will climb you eventually out of the Grandmaster rank to top 500. And how do you succeed in top 500? What are the things that you need to do to distinguish yourself at the highest level? Well, number one is forcing your playstyle through and putting that dominant pressure. So this is a demand respect type of thing. You need to be someone that has a certain amount of respect that the enemy team is giving to you, and every time they give you an inch or give you an opportunity, you exploit said opportunity. You're putting on a lot of pressure on the enemy team, and this could be from every single role. You're taking as much space as you should be. You're applying as much pressure as you should be from off angles. You're making it so no amount of shenanigans or lack of respect is flying through. And this is a big thing. The enemy team is always going to check your respect. They're going to check how good you are. They're going to demand certain things from you, and you have to rise to every single occasion. You can't allow someone on the enemy team to disrespect you and get away with it, right? You have to consistently deny an enemy team's plays and deserve that respect, because otherwise a really, really good player is going to just do whatever they want against you, and you're not going to be able to stop it. In addition to that, you have to understand that over-respecting an enemy oftentimes can turn into a flaw. So you have to find ways to where you respect an enemy enough to where you're not making silly mistakes into something they'll obviously punish you for, but you're not over-respecting them to the point where there's value that you could be getting, pressure you could be admitting, space you could be taking that you're just not, because you're too scared of their potential skill or what they'll do. So respecting someone too much becomes a flaw, but not respecting enough becomes a mistake. And you have to find that happy balance in every single lobby you're in, and that's part of the upper tier skill, perfectly finding that balance. Not only a combination of forcing your impact and playstyle and pressure through, but finding ways in which to play around the respect that an opponent deserves to have, while also not making sure that you respect them too much to the point where they're just getting free value just by existing. Anyways, if you have any questions about this, or if you think your problem is something different, definitely let me know in the comments down below. But thank you so much for coming by. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.